Good morning, everybody. I do appreciate you spending time here today. First, let me just start with why I'm here. So, AVEVA asked us to kind of share our story a bit, and I've kind of spun a little bit in a few ways. That one is kind of talk a little bit about the challenges we have trying to take a system and get something out of it with people, and also just in terms of if I can just leave with a few ideas for you to something to think about, and maybe life might just be a little bit easier for you if you're doing something new. That would be great. So, who am I? So, my name is Craig Ferry. I am the Director of Advanced Manufacturing. So what that means in our world is kind of the Industry 4.0 space, and also things like capital projects. I kind of like to give you a little bit of a context so you understand my perspective as I talk. I'm a manufacturing guy. I started as a quality technician out of college. I'm not going to say University of Miami. It's NC State, so yippee. But so it's kind of that same path of production supervisor and quality manager and operations, a couple stints as plant manager into kind of my similar roles that I am now. So my experience influenced how we went about things, and you'll hear the kind of manufacturing theme throughout the whole presentation. I would like to also introduce Pete Roller. Pete, if you could stand. So Pete is responsible for the care and health and feeding of our ecosystem, which we call Helix. Our tagline was, it's built in our manufacturing DNA, but it's essentially a AVEVA suite, as we'll talk about. But Pete is kind of similar. He's a manufacturing background. He worked his way through, but was a production manager at one of our plants. And as we started looking at these sort of things, it was something he was very interested in. So he has now learned and self-taught his way into doing all the technical, like I said, on the health and welfare of our MES, historians, and et cetera. So thank you very much, Pete. And it was started with just Pete and I, so people always ask us a question about resources. You're looking at it, okay? So the other place I like to start is we always kind of, whether we're engineers or in IT or manufacturing, we like the big shiny object. And then we have a project, whether it's a new technology or a system, like an MES system, and then we get really frustrated and disappointed when nobody else sees the things that we see in terms of what it could be doing to add value. So I'm going to talk a little bit about coffee. It has nothing to do with gypsum wallboard at all. So I have a history of buying coffee machines. My wife thinks I'm absolutely nuts. So I buy a coffee machine, didn't really make me happy, and a year or two later I buy another coffee machine. I don't want to tell you how much I spent on coffee machines. And then I went to Italy and had a chance to go into one of these bed and breakfasts, and the host brought out every morning this little mocha pot. And if you're not familiar with a mocha pot, it makes an espresso-like coffee that goes right on the stovetop. And being a manufacturing guy, when I was going through all my little coffee machines, I would be out there with my little temperature probe to make sure my process is in control, that I had the correct temperature for the coffee to make the absolute best coffee. Now, please, I should step back and say I am not a coffee connoisseur in any fashion. I had dinner with an Italian gentleman the other night, and I ordered a cappuccino at dinner. After dinner, I saw his face fall. And so I do apologize sincerely if you're happy to be in here. So I am not that guy. I'm not a coffee snob. I just like my morning latte. So the best part about the little mocha pot thing, it was just brilliant. It served a purpose for me. It met my needs. I'm also a lean manufacturing guy, so you could put the exact same amount of coffee in, the exact same amount of water in every single time. So when it makes coffee, it's consistent, it's reliable. It met my needs. So what happens then? All the other coffee machines, they're now somewhere else. I don't want to talk about my environmental landfill contribution. But the idea being that it met my needs because I engaged with this little $30 mocha pot. So that mocha pot was adding value. I was getting value for my $30. Now, it was fantastic that it was the cheapest option that I spent on all these things, but still it added value. And the same thing applies to whatever we do, whether it's a technology or a new system, those shiny objects we have, that we have to find a way to convince our users and to extract value from that. So a little bit about what we do. We're part of, our brand is CertainTeed. We're part of a larger organization called Saint-Gobain. It's pretty big. It's about 165,000 employees worldwide. To give you context of how we do things, it's a continuous process. It is, we do all the things that you probably do. We got the pumps, we got the amps, we got the flows, and we got all that stuff. Unfortunately, there's not some great measuring devices to telling us the state of the material along this journey. So we do a lot of manual quality testing that then goes into the quality system. So it's a very strong blend of continuous data and that discrete data that we take along this journey down to the final product. We started our journey as Continental Building Products, so we were a mid-sized company. We were originally part of Lafarge, which is another French company. It's ironic I'm back with another French company. But it was nice at the time. The board of directors, my boss, the VP of Operations, our CEO, very much saw the vision of data being a separator and something to give us an advantage over our customers. So lesson number one, in fact, I was even asked this question today, that corporate ownership is critical to any success you have. I love the bottom-up stuff. I'm going to talk a lot about the bottom-up stuff, but if the people that are above us don't believe it, don't want to support it, and of course they're setting those expectations as they go down the ladder from the VP of manufacturing down to, say, a regional manufacturing, down to a plant manager, down to a production manager, down to a quality manager, down to the supervisor, down to the operator, it's going to be exceptionally difficult. So we lacked really a coherent manufacturing system. We used some reporting systems and kind of your standard production reporting, shift reports, daily reports, that sort of thing. We had the process historian, which I was always a huge fan of all the way back into the 1990s because it solves a lot of problems. It allows us to see what is exactly happening. A lot of you look like you're too young to remember when we had sheets where an operator would write down what the sensor said or what the setting was or what the quality was. And then your boss asks you what happened. What do? You go, you pull out the pieces of paper, and two things happen, right? It happened in between your 2 hourly checks, or one, they didn't write down what happened. So you're lost, you don't know what's happening. So those kind of things, the things that AVEVA offer really are game changers for us if we can use that technology. So we did our due diligence. I will say AVEVA at the time did a fantastic job of separating themselves from the competitors at the time. I can't say enough of the partnership we've had with them. It's been fantastic. For me, they're not just a software company, and now when I talk to the different AVEVA management, the services, the people that they engage with at that ground level make all the difference in the world. So they have been fantastic at that. So we went through and we set up an MES. I'll explain that in a minute. We put it on Amazon Web Services, and then we got acquired by Saint-Gobain. And then at that point, we went through an exercise of convincing Saint-Gobain that what we had was valuable, and that spent a year doing that. And then they agreed, and then how we have since moved out to the rest of the facilities in our Gypsum US organization. So I won't go a lot into that because I have a number of slides, but the key thing with message here is our investment that we made was based on how fast we can identify a problem and how fast we can go to resolution. And it was very incremental. So it was, we went through, I set up all the different types of waste we have on the yields, on downtimes, and just kind of what incremental improvements we made on those two speed factors. And then also things like recognizing when we're using too much of a raw material. So, things we use workflows to tell a production manager, you're plus minus 5%. And we want to ask the question, why? So that's how we justified our investment with AVEVA. So we had some serious issues. We were data rich, information poor. We had data everywhere, from sensors to process historians to a separate quality system to a separate production system. You name it, we were everywhere. We had no way of leveraging any of that for the betterment of the business. We literally were swimming in it, and I cannot highlight enough. We really had a serious lack of visibility, not into our own process, but also what's going on with the finished goods, raw materials and those sort of things. We are a fantastic firefighting organization. We are very reactive, and that was one of the key things we had to get past is we needed to start looking ahead and finding ways to be better and understanding what those impacts are and doing something about it. And the other thing was we're very inconsistent on our accountability and follow-up. We did not have transparent systems, whereas now We have a completely open system that the VP of manufacturing, anybody, an operator at one plant can look at what's going on with an operator at another plant. So that transparency is there. We designed it that way, but we're also very accountable. So every transaction we track, if an operator changes a quality result or somebody makes an incorrect finished good or a waste accounting, then we want to be able to go back and coach and understand what happened there. So some kind of key principles that we were kind of working on. One is, you'll hear me use this word a lot today, is that engagement. I cannot highlight that enough. Talked a bit about how it is important to get the corporate engagement going, but from the ground floor up, that engagement is critical. On exception management, for years now, I've been ribbing AVEVA for the fact that, I don't know, it's probably 2018, I was down in Palm, I think it was Palm Springs at the time, and they had some fantastic 85-inch monitors with their InTouch, the one to where, I think they were simulating a power plant, the lights, the dials, the numbers and flashing, and some guy I didn't know and I were standing right there, and we both looked at each other and said, there is no way no operator could figure out where his problem is. It's just way, way too much information overload. So we want to try to find a way to really focus on what's important. If there's nothing there, even if it's having a lot of greens highlights, but if there's a blank page, great, everything's fine. Don't worry about. Focus on what we need to focus on. We wanted to try and find a way to put some closed loop management structures in. So, like example, workflows. We want certain behaviors when certain things happen. So when workflows are monitoring things on the behind the scenes, that allows us to push. If we have a quality result that hits 2 action limits, push it to the supervisor so that he knows about it. That kind of thing. So those management behaviors that we want, or supervisory behaviors, or operator behaviors, it gives us some way of structurally doing that. Of course, we wanted to create ownership. Some of the stories I'll talk about here in a second, very, very important. And bottom up, definitely bottom up. You have all been, probably like I've been through, where you're at a plant, somebody comes in and says, here's your new system, go to it. And that in itself immediately is like, everybody's doing one of these, shaking their head, not knowing, no ownership, no engagement, and it's a long slog to get what you want out of it. So by starting from the bottom up, whether it's not the operators, the supervisors, the managers, and whoever else the customer and users are, goes a long way to helping you get something out of it. The other thing that I thought was interesting is we went back and looked at our production system. It was a web-based system, and we looked at, when we were trying to design this, we looked at it and said, what are they using it? How are they using it? It was sad, really, really sad. Only 10% of the users were actually actively going to the website to run queries, to look at their, all the information they did use. What they did do is we auto-generated shift reports, daily reports, emailed them. So nobody was going to see for something new and interesting. What they were doing is taking what they got in email and using it. So big lesson, it's exceptionally hard to pull a user into some sort of location for them to look at stuff. So it's about pushing. And how do we push people to go there? Of course, driving value for the business, very, very important. Obviously, you're not doing this for the fun of it. So kind of identify and highlight those things that are, that you're trying to achieve. And then, that helps with the big picture. The human error aspect of it. Anybody who's done any process work knows about the human-induced variation. The classic one is you'll watch a shift change and you'll see set points change. Why is that? For us, the new operator comes on and he certainly knows how to make wallboard better than the prior guy. So even though everything's stable and everything's fine, first thing he's doing is doing this. So you're inducing variation to what's going on. We wanted to try to prevent some of that. For AVEVA, one of the first things that we kind of qualified is we wanted an open and accessible system. We want to use best-in-class tools, or tools that fit our purposes. We didn't want it, no offense to AVEVA, we didn't want to tie it just to AVEVA, so we wanted access to all the programming, the code. We wanted data to move freely between anything that we wanted. And of course, I talked about the partnerships we've had with AVEVA in Source. It has provided us, it's been a win-win for both, right? We're both trying to make money. We're trying to make money by getting lower costs products from them and leveraging that to make more money for ourselves. And of course, they're trying to make money. But building that partnership, I cannot tell you how much value that has been for us, even today after the first installation go live in 2019. And that's also true with other people I've met in places like here. Those important partnerships are very, very important. I am eternally grateful to Colgate and Maple Leaf Foods for giving us an opportunity to ask questions and see what we were doing when we were doing the due diligence. It's great to hear the pitches and see the PowerPoints, but until you talk to users like yourselves and talking with each other, you really don't know, right? You don't understand. And we're trying to pay that forward, as we talk with people here. That's why I'm actually standing here today. So you'll see we have a vision and a mission for what we're trying to do, but in reality, it is all about improving our performance and improving the benefit to the business. But the technology is fantastic, but it comes down to actually people doing something with it. Like I said, we're very much going down the data analytics route and data route. And again, it's having that right data in the right context, the right user, whether it's an operator, a supervisor, or manager, is critical. The other bit about it is the kind of the paradigm, and again, it's a little bit here, but the key things I want to kind of focus on is, one is we ran into this whole thing about we have a lot of devices that we were using, measuring laser scanners and such, that we kind of learned that operators didn't really care necessarily that it was that, or didn't use it, that 0.5 is 0.5. It turned out to be a relative index. So that's how they operate, right? They watch it's bigger, it's smaller, it's heavier, it's lighter. That's no good when you're trying to do data analytics, right? You need the actual value. So measurement devices, and we're going through this whole kind of learning for what we actually have, and we took kind of for granted in our plans. The whole thing about contextualize, I am a big fan of getting the right application to the right user, no code in the plants, because I have found with like a lot of the data science and people doing analysis is that lack of context hampers or lengthens considerably the amount of time before you achieve something. And in that loop, we're all about center aligning process. That's what we're trying to do. And that executing and that loop back on the managing side of it, how do we maintain that? How do we operate? Again, it's great to have all the great dashboards. It's great to have all the workflows. But if the expectation's not there, if the manager's not looking at it, that means the supervisor's not looking at it, because it's not important. And guess what? The operators aren't going to do anything with it either. So what we did is we put in the historian. We have two. We have one on site, and we also have the subscription insight in the cloud. So that allows us to give typically it's the process engineers on up through plant managers and above, on their phone, get access to the data. Being in that role at 3 o'clock in the morning when you're laying in bed, the last thing you want to do is get up and open your laptop and log onto a VPN and find out what's going on. It's nice to be able to do those kind of things. So those kind of quality of life things make a big difference. We did put the EMS in. One of the things we did, we went full blown. I mean, we did everything at once. We didn't go incrementally. So we did quality, we did reporting, we did raw materials. We did enterprise integration with SAP, and so on and such. So pretty much everything there. And of course, data. So this is where we were. I talked about we were data rich, information poor. And this is what we tried to do when we built our ecosystem using the AVEVA products and anybody else that we add into that kind of ecosystem. And I cannot highlight enough one important aspect of this that has become more present as we try to do more on the data analytics side. Process information, continuous data information is great, but at least for the quality data, the discrete data, the classifications of waste, the classification of downtime, being able to bring that all together and utilize that when you're doing things like analytics is huge. So this gives us the ability to bring all the data that we need, no matter what the type, together to try to gain benefit from it. And again, we're trying to drive data-driven decision-making. We snuck in SPC without telling anybody it was SPC. We're just telling people just keep it in a lane, right? Just keep between those two lines. So it kept it very simple. But for a guy coming off the street, it doesn't know anything about a process, all you got to do is tell him, we just want you to keep it between these two lines. If it's not, or it starts going out, tell somebody. And even for managers, it is a sea change. That's one of the things that we're kind of having is we're all asking everybody in our facilities and our organizations to change their roles, and our expectations are changing too. So we have to take that into account when we're designing our system and the support systems that go along with that. So I talked a little bit about, these are out at every workstation. That whole center section is what we call exception management. It should be blank. If it's not blank, then it's telling an operator or a supervisor the idea. You walk into an area, you look up. If it's blank, you're good. Walk on. If it's not blank, then let's look at what's going on and see if we need to address it. Honestly, this was our original design. At this point, I'm all about having a blank screen and just putting in what's important up there. My favorite dashboard we have, this was designed by an operator. I was sitting at a picnic table in our Silver Grove, Kentucky plant, and a guy came out and said, hey, you know what would be helpful for me? He explained, I got to go here, I got to walk back to the computer, I got to see what the quality result was further downstream and even further downstream. And just this whole cycle was inefficient. Why can't we just have it here? So within a day or two, we put a 65-inch monitor above the line when he's doing his rounds. All he has to look up and say, it's green, it's not green, what do I need to work on? One of those things that gain ownership with us and our operators. We also started what we call the Helix Embedded, so the continuity of how is great, put a system in, but what happens after that? We have to find ways to engage people, to get people to pull into it. So I actually have somebody on my staff whose role it is to go and understand and work with the plants to engage and embed what we're trying to do here in the plants. Again, we're changing our expectations, and we can't just leave people hanging on their own to figure out how to do it. So a few key things. One is every plant was a surprise. They have the different levels of obsolescence or technology, so we had to fill those gaps. The nice part about it is the way we designed it, we actually used 2 SCADAs, one for the control system and one with just the MES, and that helped a lot to go plant to plant where they had different PLCs, different SCADA systems, so that made a big difference. But we always had to fill a gap. So those obsolescence was something that we had to work through. So we've invested capital, things like cybersecurity and those sort of things. Scary things like you ask an automation engineer, where's your backup? And he said, well, I took that 2 months ago, it's somewhere. Oh, for God's sakes, what if we lose everything? The old adage, you can take a horse to water, but you certainly can't make him drink, is exactly right. You can bring your technology in, you can bring your fancy new AVEVA system in, but you can't make them use it. We've all been with the glitzy programs, and a year later, I call it the dusty notebook syndrome. Walk in any plant, you'll find a program with a dusty notebook that will tell you what they were supposed to do a year ago or 18 months ago. We also made a significant investment in training. We did one PowerPoint presentation at the first pilot plant and realized what a disaster that was turning into. So after that, I would come in, I'd do an intro, this is what Helix does, this is what it is, this is why it's important to you. And after that, it was all one-on-one training with the operators. We would have somebody on, we used InSource to, 2 weeks prior to go live, every operator had one-on-one training at their pace, when they're available, at their workstation. So it was a much better environment for them to learn. And then that carried through for another 3 weeks after that. So the continuous engagement side is important. So let me leave you with 3 things. One is understand the need, talk to the people, talk to the VPs down to the plant floor employees. There is a box that they have, that their minds are at. This is their worldview. They're not going to see outside that until that conversation starts taking place, and then they'll see. Create ownership. I cannot tell you how important it is to have the people designing dashboards, on a napkin, whatever it takes. That feeling of ownership, having manufacturing involved at all levels, very, very important. And then the whole engagement side afterwards. How are you going to take your system? Because every one of you have a different culture in your corporate. Every one of you have different cultures, every single plant that you have. How do you find a way to engage all those different types of groups of people and make it happen? How are you going to, a year from now, after you do your go live, how are you going to make that successful? So thank you very much, and I appreciate it. It didn't blink too much red, but thank you. Is there time for questions?
I think we may have time for one question, but we can move the rest of the questions offline.
Your left. A lot of useful learnings here for sure. But from the perspective of if someone wanted to start new, and it seemed like you did like a big bang implementation, right? Would you recommend that moving forward? Or would you suggest we start with certain limited number of functionalities? And if yes, what should that approach be? What should that approach be in that case?
Yeah, it is a good question. So AVEVA didn't want us to do the big bang approach. They wanted us to say, hey, let's start with quality and then move from there. I think I'm glad we did the bang approach because the amount of time it would take to do kind of an iterative approach, I think this has taken 3 years, and we're still, if we were done that, it wouldn't work. Now, it's very dependent on your business. We had a hard time seeing how we could disassociate it. So we wanted quality associated with work orders at the mixer. We wanted production, raw materials, all that tie in association. We wanted that to happen. So I think for us, doing it once, training once, peeling off the Band-Aid once, I think was best for us. But really, it's up to you and how much risk you're willing to take. Now, of course, golden rule number one: never, ever, ever, ever interfere with production. So the system can go away, the internet could go away, but we're still able to make product and find a way. So we design things so that the internet goes away, we store and forward data so we don't lose anything. We are an enterprise, so we do have a center in our data center where we have one application, so we have it designed that way. But it's really whatever you guys feel comfortable with.
Thank you.
A quick plug for the manufacturing panel we have at the end of the day. Craig will be on it. And hopefully we'll have more insights to share on the engagement perspective. With that, thank you, Craig.
Thank you.